All right then. Hello everyone. Um, this video I am making to upgrade your skill sets so that you learn how to use the orchestrator to run your automations. In many of my past sessions, I basically have shown you how to, for example, work on transactions or queue items directly using an Excel sheet as an input source. Uh, well, I hate to tell you that's not best practice in the real world, and one of the reasons why that is so is that doing so does not give you a high level of visibility into what's going on with every single transaction that your company might need to process, right? So if you want to know what the orchestrator is, you have to watch my orchestrator video series. I'll put the link um, into the narrative of this video. I'll also put the link to the video where we built this automation I'm going to be using um, as our example. But as a primary objective here, we're not going to be loading data directly from an Excel file and working items uh, from that source. I'm going to teach you how to use the orchestrator to do the same thing, right? Uh, I would say it feels a little different, so prepare yourself to adjust to those changes. But ultimately, it does the same thing. It just gives you like a higher level of visibility, if you like. And the orchestrator is not just about one. Um, it's not just about one. I'm sorry, cloud.uipath.com. Yeah. So it's not just about one robot, right? The idea is you're going to be working for a large organization that has, several robots, right? Hundreds of them. So you want somewhere where you have a bird's eye view of everything that's going on, and that's another reason why it's important to work everything through um, the orchestrator, right? So so I mean, for you, you would have to go to cloud.uipath.com and basically log in, right? HTTPS cloud.uipath.com to see what I'm seeing, right? So this is my home, and this little second icon is the orchestrator. And every robot that I have is going to be somewhere in this central hub for me to see how it's performing, right? Um, I mean, right now I don't have much here, but you know, I have here four processes I've loaded, including my first process. And at the home level, it tells you I have four processes, which I clicked on, and so on and so forth. Well, we're gonna teach you how to sort of get familiar with this interface. Again, you cannot learn everything there is to learn about Orchestrator in a short video, so I encourage you to follow the link and painstakingly watch my Orchestrator series. I try to make it very, very simple so that you can understand how it works, what it's for, what it does in detail. I think each video is like 10 minutes or something, or even less. So it's not difficult to follow, but this is not the objective of this video, okay? So I don't want us to get sidetracked. I'm just showing you what the orchestrator looks like. Um, in my last video, uh, I showed you how to create this automation. The video I'm going to attach to this narrative using loading it directly from an Excel source. That Excel source will be in your project folder, which if you click the folder here, you'll see it here, incoming data. So you want to have this brief collection of items which I'm opening now. You want to have this brief collection of items, which basically has the first name, last name, phone number, email, about 7 of them, right? They're all fictitious, no real person here except me, but this is my phone number or my email. So it's just dummy data. But this is what we're going to use. But what we're doing differently this time is that we're going to take this data and load it into an orchestrator work queue, right? And then from that work queue, we're going to sort of work them. So I'm not going to take it from this sheet and work it directly. Now that process of sending items into a work queue in Orchestrator is called dispatching. So in the real world, you would have to build like a dispatcher, right? So this may be a little bit untidy, but the important thing is that I want to illustrate how to use a dispatcher. So I'm going to put in a sequence here. I'm going to call it dispatcher. Okay. And the dispatcher basically means take those items and put them into a work queue in Orchestrator. But what items are we taking and putting in Orchestrator, and which queue are we going to add them to? So I'm going to quickly go back to Orchestrator and say, okay, um, here are my queues. I'm clicked on my workspace here now. So I'm clicked on queues, and I'm going to add a queue, just so you know how to do that. Create a new queue, and we'll call it data for entry. It's a silly name, but bear with me. Data for entry, right? And you can say queue of incoming, whatever that's let me say applications, whatever it is that you're trying to accomplish. Now, some of the characteristics of creating a queue is you can enforce unique reference, which means don't allow duplicates, essentially in simple English. You can choose the number of times you want to try an item. For example, if you try to work an item in this queue and it fails, if you want to retry it, you can increase it maybe 2 times, 3 times. I don't see any need for that at this time. We want to add labels. Some of the more advanced functionalities include it says, is there a specific schema or layout that your data takes? You can upload that here. None of that is the objective of this video. SLA stands for service level agreements, which means okay, at what time, if the process has not run at this time, it it becomes a breach of service level agreement or SLA. So if, for example, something is supposed to be done by 8 a.m. every day and it's not done, you just choose whichever process, like my first process, and you set, you know, what is the time at which each queue item must have been worked. For example, you might say you can't stay on this queue more than 24 hours, otherwise you've breached the SLA, which is another way of saying they expect the job to be done by a certain time. If it's not done, then you need to let them know so that they can manually work it because your automation is not meeting the requirements. But again, those are more advanced uses, which are not like relevant at this point. So I've created a queue named data for entry, and I'm just going to add, right? So I've created that queue. It's called data for entry. So back to the automation layer. Remember, you're working with data entry robot, and the first thing you have done in that automation was read that Excel sheet that I opened for you and store the data into a data table named incoming data, right? That was the first thing you did. So now I'm inserting a step that is going to dispatch this item, the items in that data table into a queue located in the orchestrator, right? Uh, the typical way to do that is to use a bulk add queue items. So you put that in, and it's going to ask you a couple of questions. What queue name are you talking about? Uh, Come on. So, well, if you remember, you must be signed into Orchestrator from the studio for that to work, right? So I had to do that. But anyway, once you're connected, you'll see the queues you have, which, if you remember, all of these queues were already there. We just added this one called uh, data for entry. And it's asking, which data table do I want to bulk add? And if you remember, the one we had made in the step above this is incoming data, right? So this is how you add items to the queue in Orchestrator. There's only one more thing you need to do, and you're all set. I would say the last thing to do is just make sure that all or nothing is selected here, which I think is the default, but just make sure this is selected. So it's going to add all items immediately, or it won't do anything. In other words, if it makes a mistake, it will probably crash, right? But if it doesn't, if you give it this command, it's going to add all, it's not going to add anything. Now, once it adds it to the queue, the old automation has it processing things differently from what we want. Um, and I think what I will want to do at this point is disable all of this so that the only items you have in this automation are one, read, read range workbook that gets the data in the source data file, stores it in a data table named incoming data, and then basically loads it to the orchestrator using the bulk queue items following the steps you just described. So all you have to do is just press play and that's going to happen. So as usual, the first thing it does is checks if there are any mistakes in your code, which I don't think we're going to have that problem. There's not a lot of stuff going on here. So it executes. After that, you can see the logs on the left lower panel. It says bulk add queue items executing. And once it's finished, you will find your items in the queue, and I'll likely stop this video and continue the class in another one so you don't, it's not too much information in one video. What I will say though is that it is typical practice to have one robot load the queue. So, okay, all right, it's telling me I need to provide a reference, so it's a good thing. But anyway, let me finish my thought there. Uh, what I was going to say is that you have to get into the habit of having one robot that dispatches and then another robot that works the queue, right? So I'm going to edit this queue now, and I'm not going to enforce unique references, okay? So I'm going to have to stop this before I can make that edit. Yeah, now that I've stopped it, I think I'm not sure. I may need to make it again, delete it and make it again, because it's really not allowing me to edit it anymore. Right, so I'm going to have to delete this queue. I can't edit that. So I'm going to remove, but before I do that, I've just copied the name because I'm going to use it again. So here we go. This looks like Korean. Remove. Yes, that's, you have to type in the name. Then I'll do it again. Okay. Not sure why it's so slow, but so when you click delete, that will go. And I want to do it again. This time I'm going to add a queue. I'm not going to enforce unique references because it's not necessary. And I'm just going to say add. All right. So that was my bad. Make that change and then try it again. Let's see whether it will work. So I'm pressing play again. It's the same name, so I don't have to change anything. And hopefully this time it'll run through with no problems. There you go, 7 seconds. So to check whether we were successful, we go here. I mean, just basically go to the edge and say view transactions, and you'll see, I mean, you should see, sorry, the internet is slow. You see that there will be about 7 items in there. I didn't really like label them, right? So um, that's something we could talk about in another class. But you see that there are about 7 items here, and there are about 7 items in this file. So that's important to know. At this point, I think I'll just stop this video and we'll continue in the next one. Thank you for watching. Bye. Bye.